Greetings everyone, and welcome to the channel. It's Londononion here with a weapon-specific deck build, and the weapon we're going to be analyzing today is the M1A sniper rifle. Now, generally I would say there are two, though technically three, aspects of building a weapon/weapon class specific deck. There is the more strengths-based build, and the compensatory/balancing build. A third option would naturally be a hybrid, which is probably the most reasonable, but every weapon is different and has its own strengths and areas of need to varying degrees. Now with this in mind, on a smaller scale I will categorize potential card selections into 4 designations: related, compensatory, synergistic, and preferential. Although Back 4 Blood already has its own designations for cards, I prefer to use my own. And before we get started, it is important to note that there are 1,000 ways to build a deck. The most I can do is showcase how I prefer to optimize this weapon's performance. So starting off with the related cards. Related cards are the ones that directly impact/buff the attributes or effects of a given weapon/weapon class. The cards in this category are controlled movement, stock pouch, and trigger control. Controlled movement grants a 40% increase in movement speed while aiming. Stock pouch increases damage by 10% and increases ammo capacity by 30% for snipers. Lastly, trigger control increases accuracy of snipers and assault rifles by 25%. Now, although these cards are related, this does not mean that they must be employed, given that snipers already have high damage and would likely have a greater ammo economy. For those who aren't sure what I'm referring to, I'd highly recommend checking out my M1A weapon review. However, given that I am biased towards capitalizing on established strengths, I would still employ each of these cards. The only balancing feature is the mobility while aiming. Now, moving on to the compensatory cards. Compensatory cards are meant to counteract the weapon's main weaknesses, or balance out its areas of need. In the M1A's case, its main areas of need are recoil control/handling, and mobility. Now, given that this weapon is a sniper, it is not necessarily made for run-and-gun-like purposes, so I won't consider squandered use of the weapon to be an area of need. But still, being able to move efficiently while aiming is always helpful. Now, the highest mobility a weapon can start off with is 100, and the lowest amongst all weapons is 40. This leaves the median at 70 units of mobility. The M1 falls just below at 65 units, so technically I will still refer to its mobility as an area of need. One of the cards meant to address mobility was already discussed in the related cards. Other compensatory cards include Cross Trainers for a 3% increase in movement, Dash for a 5% increase, or Run Like Hell for a 15% increase, with an accuracy penalty upon taking damage, among a series of other cards. Now, as I stated earlier, if I had to choose between a specialization and a jack of all trades, I would choose the specialization. With that said, I choose not to employ any compensatory cards addressing mobility. As for reload speed, I choose to employ Admin Reload. This card allows one's weapon to be reloaded automatically when stowed away, even if they are taking out a grenade. But it does come with an ammo capacity penalty of -15. However, this is already overcompensated with stock pouch from our related category. Otherwise, there doesn't seem to be any cards for addressing handling, so that one is left to the mercy of RNG and attachments. Moving on to the synergistic cards, these are cards that have impacts to increase areas of strength or work to optimize the effects of other cards or one's choice of character. Now, the M1A's main strength is its damage, and there are a number of cards that I like to apply to maximize its damage output. There is Patient Hunter, which increases damage by 10% each second of aiming down one's sights, and this stacks 3 times. There is also Confident Killer, Marked for Death, Knowledge is Power, Ridden Slayer, and Combat Training. Not including Ridden Slayer, all of the previous cards I've selected compounded together could theoretically inflict up to 80% additional damage, turning the M1A into an extremely hard hitter. There are technically other options to aid with this, such as Shredder, Overwatch, and large caliber rounds, but I consider such cards either somewhat out of touch with the M1's capabilities, too penalizing, or overshadowed by the other options. Our last area of card selection is the preferential cards. These are cards that are completely unrelated to the weapon and its strengths/weaknesses, but are still a useful perk. And this is where the most nuance can take place. Given that we have 5 slots left, I choose to give it to Grenade Pouch, Double Grenade Pouch, Durable, Offensive Scavenger, and Mag Carrier. Personally, I like to have as many offensive throwables as possible to aid with mutations. Even though the M1A can be made into a harder hitter, we all know that the spawning patterns in Back 4 Blood is broken. And the best way I have learned to combat this is with a boatload of throwables when the pressure gets too high. Now, the M1A suits a playstyle that is more calculated and relatively slow-paced. Sometimes this can be an advantage or disadvantage. In my opinion, this allows the greatest versatility and crucial choice of fighting or kiting the broken mutations, but may demand more skill where running and gunning is more appropriate. But this is also where the secondary is also important, as one of the cards caters to it, Mag Carrier, which increases the damage and ammo capacity of pistols and SMGs. When carrying the M1, my favorite secondary is the 357 revolver. It matches the profile of the M1 in that it still delivers high damage and decent effective range. Now, our last area of discussion is the character choice. For those who haven't been able to guess who I built this deck for, it can fit with either Jim or Walker, in that order. Both characters are similar in that they provide a damage boost, which will only accentuate the prowess of the M1. But as I said, guys, there's 1,000 ways to build a weapon-centered deck. These were just my preferences. Otherwise, though, that concludes the build. Thank you guys for joining me on this one, and in our next deck build, we'll be covering the M4 Carbine. It's been Londononion, and I will see you guys next time.